Hello and welcome back. My name is Randy Scamihorn, and this is the Chairman's Brief. Thank you for joining me for our final episode of the 2020-2021 year as we talk about one of the most unique graduating classes and school years in Cobb County history. Before we talk with Superintendent Ragsdale, I have the privilege of serving as the spokesperson for the school board. Every May, graduation is one of my favorite times of the year. 12 years of investment by Cobb teachers, staff, parents, and grandparents walk across the stages ready for what is next. For over 100 years, Cobb students have been graduating through economic depressions, world wars, great recessions, and now an international public health crisis. As a board, we are proud of this staff for rock-solid leadership during an incredibly turbulent time for our county, state, and country. Our seniors are graduating as a direct result of the work of our teachers, staff, and leadership of Superintendent Chris Ragsdale, as he has remained consistent to the mission, vision, and values of this county and the board. Cobb County Schools has been in the business of student success for over a century, and thanks to the resilient leaders who don't simply react to the pressure of the moment, we will continue to be successful. And now, Superintendent Chris Ragsdale. Good morning, Mr. Superintendent.
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
I'd like to start with a little bit of information about yourself. And if you would, tell us where you're originally from, maybe the schools you went to, and what you want to tell us. What do you want to share?
Sure. My family's lived in Paulding County, just next door, through most of my life. My mom and dad are still there. And so I actually went through Paulding County School District. And so it was kind of interesting to go back and start my career in education there because I was working with some of the same principals that I had through the district. Granted, some of them were in different positions and that kind of thing, but it was really cool to be able to work alongside them in the same school district that I got my first through 12th grade education. That was, back in the day before kindergarten was part of the public school district. So that was really cool to be able to start there. But it was also cool to be able to come to Cobb. As I've said many times before in public, when I was in Paulding, Cobb was always looked at as the place to work in education. Everybody wanted to be in Cobb. And we went through a pretty dark time in our district where we started to slip a little bit, and Cobb was not the Cobb of that day in time. So I could not be more proud of our team members today as they have made truly Cobb the best place to teach, lead, and learn. So when we talk about our mission statement of one team, one goal, student success, it truly has taken all of us as team members to come together and make Cobb the best place to teach, lead, and learn. So, I was back in my career in high school, I played sports. I was in the band, ran track. I was a sprinter. I was on the 4x100 relay team, played baseball. So I had a lot of relationships going through high school. And I think that's one of the keys today for people is to understand the relationship and how important relationships are, regardless of what you do, whether you're a student, whether you're in your career, whether you're in college. The relationships always pay dividends, and so it's just vitally important to establish good relationships and maintain those relationships.
Well, one of the things I've learned by working with you over the last several years is that you have studied classical music. Is that correct? And when did you start that, and what is the interest there? And tell me the value that has given you in life.
So yes, that is true. I took piano lessons, classically trained, as you mentioned, for about 13 years through college. And, being a musician is much like being an athlete. You get out of it what you put into it. So I think self-discipline has always been one of the parameters that I have taken from that, skills, if you will, that I've taken from that. And it's allowed me to apply myself regardless of what you're doing. Self-discipline is a great skill to have, but also I think what's lacking for a lot of people today is humility. And that's not to say that, to be humble is to be weak. Humility allows you to understand there's always somebody out there that's better, faster, bigger, stronger, smarter than you. So it's always very important for me to remain grounded. And I have no problem at all saying when I don't know something, and I don't pretend like I do. But I think that's something that is missing from a lot of people today. And unfortunately, I think, as I mentioned, a lot of people look at being humble or having that humility as a skill, as a trait, as being somewhat weak, I guess you could say. And I think it's exactly the opposite. I think humility allows you to have that strong self-confidence, but also know when you don't know, and don't pretend like you do.
Do you have advisory councils that you meet with on a regular basis? And what would those councils look like? And if you'll share with us.
Yeah, I do. The pandemic has put a serious hamper, if you will, in meeting with those advisory councils. One of the most important councils I have is the Teachers Advisory Council. And that's made up of multiple teachers from all levels, multiple positions, media specialists, classroom teachers, parapros, and those kind of things. So I value the input that I'm able to get from them. We have confidential conversations, and I ask them very pointed questions about, okay, what do you think about, whatever concept we might be looking at, or perhaps in the budget. Taking input from those is very important. Have a principals advisory committee where, again, it's made up of principals, obviously, but from all different levels that provide us with valuable input, provide me with valuable input. And normally it's just me meeting with them because I want it to be just open and transparent conversation. Nothing has to leave the room that they don't want to. So it gives an opening for that. And I also have a community advisory group that is made up of various industries, community leaders, and those kind of things. So I do take a lot of input. And again, that's not to mention all the anecdotal input that when you're just having conversations. I have an open door policy about, anybody that wants to send me an email as an employee, whether it's just to vent or whether it's, to suggest an idea or something that's very valuable for us. And it's also very important not to lose sight of, we're an 18,000 employee organization. We're the largest employer in Cobb County. So when we talk about our employees, like this budget, for example, that I've asked the board to approve a significant raise, a 4 to 8.6 raise for every employee. That's significant. It's a significant economic impact as well when we are the largest employer in Cobb County, to be able to help that economic stimulus, but also we're doing that by helping our team. So I think that's vitally important, and especially coming out of a global pandemic as we are.
I certainly am aware from listening to other people that you have an open door policy, and in spite of your very busy schedule, and and you've always been very open to board members calling and on the spur of the moment and trying to give them the time they need also.
Right.
But talking about the large organization and 18,000 employees, what is our expectation from each department as far as procedures, checks and balances? And two things come to mind that are very important, I think, to most people: the budget, how we spend the money, and procurement, which is part of spending the money. What's our expectations there, and how do we operate that, or what do you look for when you're talking about those two departments and any other department that comes to mind?
Yeah, certainly. So obviously, I've already mentioned we're the largest employer in Cobb County. Well, we're also a $1.2 billion organization. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of moving pieces to making sure this organization runs. A lot of people look at me as my position as superintendent to think that I'm down in the weeds of a lot of things. And
that's why I ask.
Exactly. So unfortunately, I'm not in the weeds, or maybe fortunately, I don't know which is the case, that I'm not in the weeds. There's a lot of things, that happen. You mentioned procurement specifically. I can't tell you how many pieces are in that division or that department that allows us to purchase all the things that we need in a timely manner.
And that's from pencils to large air conditioning units and
right.
buses and cars. And,
right.
And not to interrupt you, I apologize.
Yeah. So bids, RFPs, all of those kind of things that are necessary for a procurement department to function efficiently for an organization as large as we are. Our IT department, obviously I came to Cobb as a chief technology officer. We have one of the best IT departments on the planet. And what a lot of people don't understand as well is when they think about education, some people think, well, it's just, the local school. But the IT department actually has to be such skilled at what they do to keep us running. We have over 120 sites that are connected, networked together. So when you think about the internet and having access to the internet, email, all of these kind of things, without a top shelf IT department, we would have employees not being able to do their job, not being able to teach in the classroom. Now that the internet is kind of just part of our everyday life, it's also part of that classroom environment as well for the teachers to be able to access the tools that they need, both that we provide them locally, but also that are on the World Wide Web. So it is very important that we attract and retain that talent. So when I talk about, the raises and a focus on employees as the budget is this year, that's why, because not only do we have IT, we've got maintenance, we've got our transportation department. We take for granted the school buses. We have 1,000 school buses on the roads every day. That we have over 75,000 students traveling in those school buses to and from school and home each and every day. And that's a very high percentage of ridership for a district as large as we are. So there's a lot of things that go into, you mentioned, the purchasing of air conditioners, the HVAC system, making sure in the coldest of days in the winter that the schools and classrooms are warm, and then the hottest days of summer that they're cool. So there's a lot that goes into, and I can't talk about divisions and departments without highlighting our nurses through this pandemic.
Yeah.
So they have just been an integral part and a pivotal role in allowing us to make sure that our classrooms are as safe as possible for our staff, our teachers, and our students through a pandemic. So it's difficult enough to be an educator, but to be an educator in the middle of a pandemic it's just shown the success that we experience as a district is brought about by the team members, especially those teachers that go above and beyond each and every day.
Well, you mentioned some more departments besides the 2 or 3 I mentioned. One's transportation, but you indirectly, and I don't want to slight them, you indirectly mentioned HR, human resources. Now, as we're ending the school year, we're looking to replace the very few that retired and need, transferred because they moved or whatever. So where are we with that? And what is our retention rate with our people, with our teachers?
So I don't know exactly what it is right off the top of my head, but we are only a couple of percentage points down from our retention level of last year and the prior year. So there was a lot of talk about, teachers and educators would flee the field because of this pandemic, because of what they've had to go through during this pandemic, and that's just not the case that we're seeing. So again, and I've talked to other school district superintendents as well, and they're seeing the same thing, that the retention level is still very high, which is very encouraging, because obviously we don't want to lose the great teachers that we have in Cobb. So it's very important that we attract, but it's most important that we retain the best teachers that we can, the best employees that we can.
Well, and I see that even though HR may do a lot of the preparatory work, but I see that as one of your most important functions, is being able to attract good employees at all levels so that we can function in an efficient manner that we've been accustomed to.
Sure.
And transportation has to be efficient too, because I believe most, if not all, of our buses do what we call triple runs for each level of our.
A lot of them do multiple runs. Yeah. Yes.
So, well, let's move on to something else. And you mentioned COVID-19. So, you probably already know the answer, but I'm going to try to put you on the spot. What of all the public health protections for staff and students, and lots of political pressure and community pressure, all while supporting students learning supporting student learning for 113,000 and 8,700 graduates. What will you remember about this graduating class in particular?
Yeah, I mean, it's challenging for these seniors. Last year when we closed down school in March, Friday the 13th, nobody, I don't think, truly contemplated that was the end of the school year. And truly no one contemplated all the things that seniors would miss, those seniors that graduated last year, the class of 2020. So we started out this year. Fortunately, we're able to have a football season. So we were able to do that, but we still missed a lot of things. As graduates, when their rite of passage, walking across the stage to get their diploma, a lot of things are assumed to have already taken place by that point in time. Last athletic performances as a senior. Whether it's a state, competition, or whether it's just a local competition, musical performances, all of these kind of things, proms, dances, all of the things that everyone has taken for granted, basically, over the past years. Last year, it was just a punch in the face that we're missing these things as seniors. We were unprepared for what this would look like. And this past school year, while we were a little bit more prepared going into it, we still truly didn't know what we didn't know. Unfortunately, I think this graduating class of 21, just like 20, they have missed a good deal of their senior year. Participation and events kind of thing. But looking back on it, I think resilience is the word that I would use, because yes, it was a struggle, it was a challenge to get through it, but when we developed, okay, here's the procedure, here's the standard operating procedures we're going to go by, everybody adapted and we moved forward. And I think that's the key for this district, and why it's the best place to teach, lead, and learn, is that we're always focused on moving forward.
Any time that there's a emergency or like a pandemic that comes maybe once in a lifetime, certainly I hope that's the only thing.
Right.
But our vision, if I may say, we had already started developing CTLS. And we saw that as a possible way to help those that maybe were in the home, or teachers that needed to have some time off. Long before I can remember us starting that, it didn't have a name, but about 6 years ago, that we started that. And the pandemic forced us to accelerate that. So, and also come up with procedures where teachers could simultaneously teach virtual as well as in class. Now, we've learned from that, and I understand that that's not going to happen this coming year, though we're going to give more choices in this year's to come. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, the only difference I would say is more choices. I don't know that we're going to give more choices, but we're going to continue to provide a choice for our families. But the remote virtual choice is not going to look the same as it did last year. Because just as you mentioned, and I mentioned on Friday the 13th of 2020, we had to flip a switch and we went to 100% remote learning. That is never the way you want to implement any kind of project in any industry. But in education, yes, we were more prepared than most because we were already going down that path with CTLS. CTLS student was always planned, but it was nowhere close to ready to implement. And again, I greatly appreciate the $8.1 million we got from the commissioners from their CARES Act money, because that tremendously assisted us to be able to get CTLS student ready. And we were able to start the school year with CTLS. Were there technological hiccups and challenges? Of course. There were, I think the number, and I don't remember it exactly, but out of the top 25 largest school districts in the country, over 20 of them started 100% virtual. Obviously, we were one of them. So yes, there were hiccups, there were challenges. We overcame those very quickly. And I think we're seeing something today that we have created, and that no one else comes close to having something like CTLS. We're constantly approached by other school districts across the country about coming to see exactly how we're doing this, how we're getting it done. And at the bottom line, it's a benefit for our students and it's a benefit for our teachers. And you mentioned that, about, having to simultaneously teach face-to-face and virtual students. And we understand that that was a great challenge for our teachers. At the same time, though, it was a great benefit for our families and students and also teachers, because the challenge we had through this pandemic was the quarantine protocol. We would have to close classrooms, schools, those kind of things, grade levels, because of the quarantine process. Either we didn't have enough students to have school or we didn't have enough adults to have school. So being able to have CTLS to where a student could go from a face-to-face classroom today to a virtual classroom tomorrow with the same teacher in the same place of their teaching and learning, and not having to adjust to anything other than, instead of being in the classroom, you're now at home. That's a tremendous benefit for our students. And the bottom line, though, is I can't say enough about our teachers adapting to that, because I know it was hard. I know it was a challenge. And that's why we made a modification to avoid that for next year. Still, we're providing a virtual option, but it's not going to be a teacher having to teach both virtual and face-to-face students simultaneously.
Well, I've said it a number of times this year, and I think your consistency this year has really been spot on all year. Knowing how the whole world has been upside down, how you have been able to make consistent decisions and not react to the pressure of the moment. Do you have any final words to this year's graduating class?
Wow. Yeah, again, I'm going to go back to resilience. Just being able to push through the challenges. Having come through both junior and senior year in a pandemic, yes, it has been disappointing for many aspects, but being able to have come through that, to push through that and going on to the next phase, whether that's going straight into the world of work, armed forces, or trade, or college, you're prepared. You're more than prepared. Yes, it has been a challenge to get through this junior and senior year in a pandemic, but the next phase, the saying about what makes you stronger. So, everything that we have gone through, everything that we have pushed through, I think it just makes success that much more sweet, if you will, to be able to see everything come to the culmination of graduation. Graduation is always one of the most special times of year, and it's more. It's easier for us at the central, especially at the executive cabinet level, to be constantly reminded by graduation because we participate in the graduation process each year. But for others, it's real easy to lose sight of that graduation moment because maybe you're not directly, interacting with the graduation process or ceremony. But regardless of the position you play on our team, when we have over 8,500 graduates walk across the stage in the next coming weeks, it's just very important to never lose sight of all 18,000 team members had a part and played a role in the success of that student. That's why our mission statement is one team, one goal, student success. Truly, student success is when they walk across the stage and are prepared to go to that next phase in their life, whatever that's going to be. It's truly our team has risen to the occasion to make sure that they are prepared and they are prepared to be successful.
Well, Superintendent Ragsdale, thank you so much, and that's a great way to sum it all up. And I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day to share a few moments with us and your thoughts, and also a little bit of personal information. I appreciate all of that. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Chairman's Brief. I hope our time together has been useful in helping you, our customers. It is because of our community and staff that this county is the best place to teach, lead, and learn. We have spent this school year together learning more about how our schools work for you, and I will be excited to join you again this summer as we prepare for the 2021-2022 school year. Thank you again and have a good day.